Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Here with a little late night update to show you what's happening in the Yorktown Bros Fantasy Football League. First up, best manager goes to Skip, of course. He's just doing a fantastic job starting that optimal lineup week after week. Got to give him props for that and make sure everyone knows how good of a job he's doing. Narrow victories. Ryan pointed this out earlier in the week, but we will take a closer look at this one. In the first matchup, we have the high score of the week and the stomp of the week. Not close. My new team members, Pacheco and Kelsey, did not do well in their first week. Potential trade regrets going on here, but Amari Cooper, who I thought was just a throwaway, ended up actually being the MVP of that trade, and him in combination with CJ Stroud throwing for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns made this not close. The Priors team, top half, did pretty good. Lots of double-digit scores here. Bottom half, not so much, including a goose egg out of Michael Thomas. And that will lead to an almost 50-point deficit. They are now on a 4-game losing streak. Not looking good. Next up, another not close matchup. Another team on a big losing streak as Big Lou gets the win here over Brian. Big Lou running this big triple Bengals stack, doing well. Big pickup here out of Jake Ferguson, had a good week. Brian's team started off hot on Thursday with Deontay Johnson, but Herbert is just... Excuse me. Herbert is just not looking strong of late. Might need to figure that out. That leads to an almost 30-point deficit. Next up, another inverse Jeff. Also, once again, including Jeff, as Brittany gets a win here with 76 points, the second lowest score in the league. Jeff, not many people in double digits. His kicker was his high score of the week. I feel like I've said this before about Jeff. I'm not going to look it up, but it just sounds familiar. Brittany's team, also not looking good. Barely scraped together a few double-digit performances to come out with 76 points. But she found herself in the win column, moves up to 2-7, and Jeff continues his losing streak. Here we had the actual closest matchup of the week, not between Zach and Paul because that one had some bench players, but this one came down to the last play of the game where Dak came up 4 yards short of throwing for a touchdown on that final play, and that gave Ryan the barely 1-point victory over Chase to keep his win streak alive and move Chase down to a tie for second place. Ryan kind of escapes here with a down week from Lamar. Pickens and Flowers barely had over 2 points. Not a super good week by his team, but was able to scrape by a victory. Also aided by Chase not being able to pull the trigger on starting Taysom Hill and instead starting Dallas Goedert, which of course would have given him the win in this matchup. We're going to take a look at this one at the end. And here we have another close matchup. Came down to Monday Night Football. Tim needed just over 13 points by Eckler, and it looks like it happened easily and it was not a close matchup. This 20 points is largely aided by a garbage time touchdown for Eckler. He only passed the threshold that Tim needed with like 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. This was a very close matchup, but Skip comes out on the losing end here, probably because he's still starting Kadarius Toney. His team had an okay week, but I mean, you lose by less than 7 points. There's got to be a wide receiver out there somewhere that would have made up that difference. Definitely not on your bench or on your team, but it exists somewhere out there. Now, we have this one. Ryan brought it up, but as we see here, Zach benched 2 players on Monday Night Football to avoid any negative point shenanigans. He won by 0.5. The 2 players he would have started combined for 14.5, so he would have won by 15 points. Now, I spoke of this trade earlier that happened between me and Zach. This is the net gain Zach got by that trade. And if you remember, I just said he would have won by 15 points. This means that he would have lost by 1 point had he not made that trade this week. Now, I'm sure Paul has already turned the video off if he even watched it in the first place because he's so salty. Thinks this is somehow me griefing him and colluding to get a loss to help me get into first place. But I just think it's a savvy managerial move out of Zach. He's been wheeling and dealing all season, and he gets a win. He manufactures a win here. And that being said, great job, Zach. We can go ahead and flip that trade, flip-flop the players back this week, and we'll be all good to go. It's always a pleasure doing business with you. That takes us to the standings. As I said, I am now in first place. You may look at this points against and notice it's a drastically lower number than everyone else in the league. As I said last week, convenient matchmaking. Paul still has the most points for, but he finds himself in a three-way tie for second place. Brian now has the most points against. I thought this was interesting. Pryor's at 1,000, Tim at 1,001, Brian at 1,002. That's just kind of cool. That's it for the standings. Matchups for next week. The big matchup is between Paul and Big Lou, two teams tied for second place. The projections heavily favoring Big Lou at this point. Paul has Tyreek on bye. Paul could be finding himself with the most points for fighting for his playoff life after this week. Only other big matchup is between these two 5 and 4 teams, Ryan and Skip, two teams going in drastically different directions, but we'll see who takes this one home. That's it for me. Catch y'all next week on the Commissioner's Corner.